Israel has not stopped bombing the Gaza Strip for a single day, and in the last few days it has been doing so around the clock. In this context, the death toll surpasses the 35,200 mark, without counting all those buried under rubble. The government of Spain denied entry into its territorial waters to a Danish-flagged vessel carrying armament bound for Israel. And Russian President Vladimir Putin held a press conference in the Chinese city of Harbin, where he attended the Russia-China Forum on Interregional Cooperation. He made reference to the conflict with Ukraine. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos, and from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba, we begin with the news. Israel has not ceased on its bombing of the Gaza Strip, where the armed forces have already killed more than 35,200 people, not counting the bodies still under the rubble. Most recent attacks have been perpetrated against the Nuseirat refugee camp in the center of the Palestinian enclave. The occupying forces also destroyed the school of Al-Yuni, where hundreds of displaced people were sheltered, with health authorities of the enclave confirming at least 4 children were killed. In the last 12 hours, the Rescue and Civil Defense Brigades also reported the destruction of 50 Palestinian homes, all of them occupied. And the International Court of Justice heard the arguments from South Africa denouncing Israel for implementing a new and horrendous phase of the genocide against the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip. Let's see.
The African country considers that the genocidal operation threatens the survival of the Palestinians and demands the immediate cessation of the Israeli incursion into the Gazan city of Rafah.
It is yet again compelled to return to this court in recognition of its obligation under the Genocide Convention due to the continuing annihilation of the Palestinian people, with over 35,000 now killed and most of Gaza reduced to rubble. Despite the short notice of this oral hearing, South Africa has traveled here today to do what it can to urgently stop the ongoing genocide. The gravity of the attacks requiring urgent and speedy proceedings to preserve the rights of the Palestinian people, a commitment which South Africa takes seriously.
Lawyer Vusumo Simandosela questioned that the South Africa expected, the last time it appeared before this court, that this genocidal process would be stopped.
Its attacks on Palestinians in Gaza, and in so doing is willfully breaching the binding orders of this court. Israel similarly breaches the binding resolutions of the United Nations Security Council, erroneously believing from the lack of countermeasures by the international community that it is exempt from having to respect international law. This institutionalized impunity has led Israel to engage in this genocide, which has shocked the conscience of humanity.
Instead, the Israeli genocide against Gaza has continued and reached a new and horrendous phase that seeks to destroy life in Palestine and wipe them off the face of the earth.
The genocidal acts described in South Africa's application were foreseen and foreseeable from the onset. Israel's intent was always to destroy Palestinian life and to wipe them off the face of the earth. Rafah is the final stand. Without Rafah, there is no more Palestinian life in Gaza to speak of, no more Palestinian identity, and no possibility of reconstruction. Mr. President, the rule of law can only survive through the orders of this court. If the rule of law is to have any meaning, let it be today and with this case. It is no longer enough to order unhindered access to humanitarian aid when it is in fact the military operation in Gaza that is preventing it. It is no longer enough to encourage compliance with the peremptory precepts of the Genocide Convention when Israel's deliberate contempt for the international rule of law has been so plain and so public.
In the activity that takes place this Thursday, the South African representation requests provisional measures to protect the Palestinian population from further serious and irreparable violation of their rights.
Displaced Gazans from Rafah have set up tents on Deir al-Balah beach in central Gaza, and they say they are afraid.
I need mattresses to sleep on with my children. I need a torch at night because my 8-month-old baby is afraid of the dark. Flies fly around him all day. We want the proper tent to shelter in rather than staying like this where everyone can see us.
As you see, people are on the beach and they are afraid. Israeli naval boats shoot all the time at them. People are on the beach, but in danger. It's been peaceful so far. And again this morning we went to see our shopkeepers. We went to see the various structures impounding me to reassure them.
We stay in Palestine as U.S. forces set up a temporary pier on the Gazan shores for the entry of humanitarian aid and other supplies across land borders that had largely stopped since Israel began its incursion into Rafah last week. The aid will be loaded onto trucks that will begin disembarking in the coming days, U.S. Central Command said in a statement Thursday morning. The United Nations will receive the aid and oversee its distribution in Gaza, according to the Central Command, which said no U.S. troops would set foot in the territory. Dozens of humanitarian organizations have announced the dire humanitarian situation in Gaza and reject the double standards by the United States and its Western allies, who talk about bringing humanitarian aid to the Gazan population while simultaneously approving more budgets to arm the Israeli government. And meanwhile, on Friday, the Spanish government denied entry into its territorial waters to the Danish flagship Marienda Nica, which was carried arms to Israel. In this sense, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs prevented the ship from making a docking in Cartagena. Previously, Spanish social activists requested a similar measure for the cargo ship Borkum, but the public prosecutor's office rejected the request because the cargo was destined for Czech Republic. The blocked Danish ship left the port of Madras in India with a final destination of the port of Haifa in Israel. In the meantime, the Spanish foreign minister defended the measure and affirmed that it was justified. In Bahrain, the 33rd Arab League Council Summit opened on Friday in Panama. Its council in the presence of the number of leaders, presidents, kings, and princes of Arab countries and heads of participating delegations. The event focuses on a number of political, security, economic, social, and cultural issues on the agenda of the meeting of Arab foreign ministers. On the 12th of the month, a meeting of the Economic and Social Council was held at ministerial level to prepare for the summit, at which several issues were discussed. The most important of them was the emergency response plan to address the economic and social impacts of the Israeli aggression in the Gaza Strip. They also reviewed the progress made in the completion of the Greater Arab Free Trade Zone and the establishment of the Arab Customs Union. Now let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the South. President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, held a press conference in Harbin City, China, within the framework of the Russia-China Forum of Interregional Cooperation. There he referred to the conflict with Ukraine. Russian head of state closes his first international visit on Friday after his opening on May 7th. Putin stressed the importance of the agreement expressed in the extraordinary joint declaration with President Xi Jinping, in which they made clear the status and strength of the main emerging countries and regions of the global south and their constant upsurge. The Russian leader further affirmed the sincere willingness to reach an early exit of the conflict with Ukraine, noting that his soldiers are winning every day and that the operations in Kharkov are proceeding strictly according to plan. And also on Thursday, the president of China, Xi Jinping, highlighted the importance of good bilateral relations for joint development and global current affairs.
The ups and downs of China-Russia relations over 3/4 of a century have shown that consolidating and continuously developing the permanent good neighborly China-Russia friendship, comprehensive strategic coordination, and mutually beneficial cooperation are in line with the fundamental interests of the two countries and their peoples. It meets the expectations of the international community and the development trend of the times. It is of irreplaceable importance.
For his part, Russian President Vladimir Putin highlighted the results of 75 years of relationship with China.
75 years is a short period by the standards of the centuries-old history of Russia and China. But during this period of time, we have been able to achieve serious results, accumulating valuable experience of close, good neighborly interaction, incorporate joint successes and achievements, as well as important historical lessons.
In other news, violence has plunged New Caledonia into a crisis of security, identity and politics amidst demonstrations against a controversial electoral reform. The riot in the South Pacific French territory have been going on for 3 consecutive nights, leaving 5 people dead, including 2 policemen and several hundred wounded. Largely indigenous protests against a French plan to impose new voting rules on the archipelago have spiraled into the deadliest violence since 1980s. New Caledonia, which lies between Australia and Fiji, 17,000 kilometers from Paris, is one of several territorials around the world that remain part of France in the post-colonial era. On Thursday, Chad's junta leader, General Mahamat Idris Debny Itno, won the African nation's May 6 presidential election, as it was informed by the Constitutional Council. After obtaining 3,777,279 of the votes, which is more than the absolute majority of votes cast, the general secured his victory in a run for the presidential election, according to the final results. The highest electoral authority declared the winner and announced the rejection of the bid by Prime Minister Souceh Masra to annul this outcome, who also called on supporters to protest in his favor. In this regard, Masra came second with 18.5%, while former Prime Minister Albert Fahimi Badake won 16.9% of the votes. Also on Thursday in Uruguay, the Single National Union of Construction and Annexes held a partial general strike and a march to the Ministry of Labor to make their concerns visible. The union members denounced the trend towards the precariousness of work conditions as a result of the lack of state supervision. The demonstrators also demanded greater controls to guarantee compliance with the law and collective bargaining agreements, warning of an increase in informal labor. The union leader, Richard Ferreira, stressed that this strike and mobilization are part of a national campaign for work in response to the loss of between 10,000 and 11,000 jobs.
It has to do with work. It has to do with public investment and the dynamization of the construction industry, since some projects have ended and therefore 11,000 jobs have been lost. There is great concern about the job expectations based on investment for this year and for next year, considering that the national budget will be discussed on the basis of a new government and that it will begin to be applied in 2026. The second thing has to do with deregulation. There is a growing number of informal or illegal work, so there are average percentages of informal work around 20%, but in some departments it is more than 50%. We understand that not only the companies but also the government must take action to ensure that the regulations, the agreements, and the legislation are complied with, and that they are enforced.
In Brazil, 5,000 representatives of the Quilombos arrived in Brasilia to participate in Aquilombar 2024 and to exchange different experiences of struggle and knowledge. The second edition of Aquilombar seeks to explore the links between the past, present, and future, highlighting the importance of cultural roots in the construction of an inclusive and sustainable future, with the theme Ancestralizing the Future. During the day, the representatives of the Quilombola community participated in the ceremony for the presentation of the Certificate of Autonomy and Definition. This is a crucial document for the legal recognition and guarantee of the rights of the Quilombos. The event also included activities such as conferences, cultural shows, art exhibitions, a Quilombola fair, and discussion circles. Meanwhile, a study by a Socio-Environmental Institute of Brazil has warned that more than 98% of the territories of Quilombola communities are at risk from mining and private infrastructure. The document points out that Quilombolas have also received threats of eviction and death from farmers in the private sector. They have also experienced fires, illegal logging, and invasions of their territories. The text points out that the systematic attacks against the Quilombos of Maranhão intensified after the defeat of former President Jair Bolsonaro by President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva in the 2022 elections. Now we have a final short break coming up, but before, we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and also share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Panama's President Laurentino Cortizo will leave the government on June 30th with a trail of problems that hit the Panamanian people, especially the most vulnerable population. How do people see this legacy? We'll tell you.
The Cortizo government increased the debt by 87% in just 5 years. When Cortizo assumed the presidency in mid-2019, the country owned $24,000 million, and now it has soared to more than $50,000 million.
La alta deuda externa. ¿Sí?
The high foreign debt. Why? Because the higher the foreign debt, the harder the conditions imposed by the international financial organizations. And this has a direct impact on the country's finances.
The PRD administration raised the Panamanian debt from 30% of the GDP to 60%. Most of that debt is placed in bonds in U.S. banks. 20 out of every $100 of the year's state budget is spent on debt service alone.
High indebtedness, corruption, which we cannot deny that we also had, high inequality. All of this has contributed a lot to high inequality, to the point that Panama went from 5th or 6th place to 4th. What is this in terms of world inequality? That is a terrible legacy for this society.
On the other hand, Cortizo began his mandate amid protests like those of 2019 against failed electoral reforms designed by businessmen. These continued throughout his mandate for various cases of corruption, the high cost of living, and extractivism.
This is a government that unfortunately developed in its last phase what we can call a policy of bill passing. Because the social movement showed an organization and tenacity of struggle that was expressed in the last 2 years, in 2022 and in October 2023, against the mining project.
Analysts agree that the reading of the past elections also includes a terminal phase of this protest that led to a punishment vote.
The majority of the popular vote, the most impoverished, those who felt the brunt of the effects of the pandemic, of the disaster of how the pandemic was handled in Panama, which led to the unemployment of hundreds of thousands of people and the bankruptcy of thousands of businesses. Those people, their main problem, and the polls showed this, was not corruption, it was unemployment.
The government transition begins on June 3rd in preparation for D-Day, which is July 1st, when Cortizo leaves the Palacio de las Garzas.
El próximo presidente José Raúl Mulino. Para Telesur, desde Ciudad de Panamá, Reca Chandiramani.
We go now to the world of sports. The Secretary General of the Supreme Committee for the Delivery and Aid Legacy of Qatar, Hassan Abdullah Al-Tawari, assured on Wednesday that his country has the capacity to organize the Olympic Games. During his participation in the Doha Economic Forum, the official reaffirmed the country's ability to manage the Olympic event in the best way and reiterated the desire to host the Games in 2036, but made it clear that this decision rests with the International Olympic Committee. On the topic, the Secretary pointed out that the country is still reaping benefits after organizing the FIFA World Cup in 2022, and its infrastructure makes it ready to host more events in the fields, not only in the world of sports. Let's go now to the United Kingdom, where the 20 clubs that make up the Premier League will vote at the annual meeting scheduled for June 6th on the possibility of eliminating the video assistant referee known as VAR starting next season. The request was originally made by the Wolverhampton club, which claimed that the system has had a negative consequence in the relationship between fans and football. In this sense, the club also alleges that the VAR removes the essence of the game, citing its impact on goal in celebrations and stating it causes confusions on the pitch while plays are being scrutinized. The proposal now needs the support of the clubs at the June 6 General Assembly, where 14 votes in favor from the 20 teams that make up the Premier will be required. In other news, the Ministry of Culture of France returned 2 paintings seized from the Nazis to their rightful owners. Recent research has revealed that art dealer and rightful owner Gregor Schutzermann was forced to flee from Paris in March 1941 to escape anti-Semitic persecution. To finance his escape and ensure his livelihood, he had to sell several paintings, among them a Renoir and a Sisley. These works were bought by a German art dealer who sent them to Germany, where they were found after the war. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and also on TikTok. For TeleSUR English, my name is Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.